All right, so I'd like to go ahead and start off. I'm going to do some intros of the panel, just to give you an idea. I know a lot of these are familiar faces. Most of you probably know most of the panel here. My name is John Wechsler. I'm on the board here at ITIA. I started a company called spokenoke, which you may have heard about here sometime in the walls here today. If not, you're going to hear more about it over the coming days, weeks, and months. We are a company that gives you the ability to add video to anything. So you saw the cool little sticker in the note card. Hopefully you got a sample. But we are the type of company that I believe ITIA is designed to support, which is those in the innovation economy. It's no surprise that I drew the disruption panel. I am a specialist at disruption in many, many ways. So let's get started on the disruption discussion. And let me turn my phone on because I didn't print off. I hear you can actually put this on paper now. It's a new thing to me. But so Cynthia, on the right-hand side, Cynthia is the president of CSpring. They are up at the IoT lab with a major presence there as well. But they specialize in business and technology consulting. At the end of the day, I would summarize what they do is they turn people into digital superheroes, I think is the language that I hear a lot. And it's really cool to see the company and the culture that they're building. She founded CSpring over a decade ago, and she's basically giving business leaders improved access to their data. That's the primary focus, and therein lies the idea of the digital superhero, which we'll ask you about here in a little bit. Next up, in the middle, is Cornelius George. He is the co-founder and CEO of Chuqlab. Chuqlab is an innovative platform that, and I'm just going to riff on this. I can't read all this and do this, but what they do is they give law enforcement the ability to cultivate information from recorded conversations and digital communication. So if you are an investigator and you're looking for information about a red Honda and a gun, you can actually just search for that, and it pulls up pointers to that digital communication stream. Obviously quite powerful, very big on the data analytics and cyber side. Really excited to see what they do in the coming years. This is an emerging field and an area that's ripe for disruption. So really excited to hear more on that, Cornelius. And then lastly is Dan O'Toole. Dan came to me, oh my gosh, we had a meeting, I bet about 7 or 8 years ago. And he said, I got this idea, it's a deck, and you're gonna be able to have a drone come in and it's gonna deliver stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what you got into before you came over because the chewables aren't even legal in Indiana yet, but let's keep this conversation going. Dan has built a company that is the first to bring a drone mailbox, a delivery platform to the world. And so they've done their first delivery of a USPS package. They've had a drone deliver I think they do sandwiches and prescriptions and just about anything you can imagine into a secure environment that's climate controlled. And so we'll get into how they're going to disrupt the future of delivery. So welcome all of you. So Cornelius, let's start in the middle and then we'll kind of riff on some of these themes. Law enforcement, I know you. Full disclosure, I'm a friend and a supporter and an investor. A small part of Cornelius's company. I think it's important to always talk about that so everybody knows what's going on here. But I invested in the jockey, the horse, the jockey as much as the horse here. So the business idea of Chuqlab, I didn't know much about. In the discussions that we had, I found out you're really not in law enforcement. How does somebody not in law enforcement decide to go disrupt that industry?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you all for having me here. I don't know why, but we'll start. So how it really came to be is, I worked in several different industries before, in financial services and all that. And when I got into tech, I wanted to start a company. So I started with that. And instead of just going out and saying, I have this great idea, I woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning, I took some of the things that I've learned from sales, and sales is always about planning. And so what I did was I also wanted to be personally involved, right? Because a lot of times when you create companies and things like that, you look at it as a job. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration. It's just how I live. So what I did was I created this 4-pillar for any idea that I was going to follow so that it fit with my life. 1, it had to be something I was passionate about. 2, it had to be something that changed the world for the better. 3, it had to, solve a big, complex problem in a very simple way that's scalable. And then the 4th one, obviously, is a business, so it had to have a pathway to profitability. So like you said, I wasn't in law enforcement, but I knew that I had to start with a problem, right? Because I didn't want to just, because I had this saying, and pardon me, you're going to be mad because I curse, it happens. Nobody gives a shit about your features, is what I say to everyone, right? It's about problems. People care about problems being solved. So I spent some time going out and asking people, just about everyone I met, people on airplanes, people I met in bars, people I met at sports events, anything. What's a problem you have that you wish somebody would solve? And I had a conversation with a friend of mine that was in law enforcement. And I've had people give me answers all the time, but none of them fit those 4 things because that's super important to me because I know this is my life. This is going to be my passion, so it had to fit that. And when he told me about this problem that he's having in the neighborhoods and some of the crimes and how they're having solve rates, for example, a lot of you don't know this, but in the United States, the arrest rate for violent crimes, right, 50-something%. That's just arrest. And that doesn't mean that they're arresting somebody for the crime. That means that in the investigation of the crime, somebody maybe has some drugs on them, they arrest them for that, that counts as an arrest, right? So I started looking at that, and it was daunting. I'm like, what's a problem you have that's solving that? He's like, look, dude, we have so many jail phone calls, interviews, all these audio and video files that somebody has to sit down and sift through and listen to manually to try to get information, and we can't search that. And it seemed idiotic to me that nobody has solved that problem. And I went out and researched it and looked at it for a long time, and no one has solved that problem. And so that's when I was like, you know what? I'm not in law enforcement, but this is not a law enforcement problem. This is a technology problem. I'm a technology guy. I know that this can be done. And that's when I decided to go ahead and try to think that I'm dumb enough or smart enough to figure it out, and then that's what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, I think that kind of ties into this idea of digital transformation with you're taking an analog program, essentially, and kind of moving into the digital frontier. Cynthia, you have more than 50 employees now, I believe, at CSpring. What advice would you give to someone who wants to be a digital transformation superhero? How do you view that, what he's doing, actually, and what advice would you have for someone that wants to disrupt their industry?
So when you ask about being a superhero, right, it's a superpower. It's something that not everybody has. And what I see as a digital transformation superpower is actually mindset-based, right? It's a mindset. And it's a mindset for me, what I breathe and live every day is that data is a strategic asset, right? So I heard what you had to say, Cornelius, and what you saw and found is so typical. You know, people have all kinds of data assets. Sometimes they're paper, John. You know, sometimes they're actually digital, but they have all these data assets, and they're in a lot of different places, and they can't get their hands on them. Maybe they're too voluminous, right? So they can't get to the information that's contained there, or maybe they have it, you know, stored here and there. You think about like personal finance. We can all relate to that, right? So my son just college freshman, okay? So he has a savings account. He has, a debit card, of course. He's got, a investment account. And then I would have him do expense reports for me, right? So, he'd need gas, so he'd use his debit card. Anyway, and then he was serving this summer tables and had a drawer full of cash, okay? He has no idea what he has in terms of money. It's here, it's there, he's got some in his car. I mean, he's kind of holding it lightly. That is like data immaturity, right? We want to mature our data and analytics, environments, and as we do, we can put data to work just the same way as if we get our arms around what we have in terms of financial assets, we can actually put those to work. And I think so often people don't think of data as a strategic asset. They might say that they do, but when you look at how they're using or actually not using their data, it tells a whole different story.
So how do we create more people that see the world that way? Are they grown? Are they born? Is there a way to teach and bring people along in that process?
Absolutely. I think the number one way to do it is just give them a taste, right? Like give them a taste of what their data can do. I know even from when I was an early entrepreneur, sometimes I needed to make a decision and I would hesitate. I wouldn't know what to do. And the only reason that I hesitated was because I didn't I didn't know the answer. It wasn't black and white to me, and it wasn't black and white because I didn't have the information I needed. I shared an analogy with a couple of people at my table. You know, if my foot has an infection, and I don't know what it is, I'm just going to put a little Neosporin on there or something, right? If a doctor tells me that it's gangrene, I'm cutting off the foot. There's no hesitation. There's no black and white, right? It's going to kill me. And so when you get data in front of you that makes your decisions very clear, you can make better decisions faster. So you put that data in the hands of a business person in the lines of business, not just a technical person who's generating reports, typically looking at history versus, maybe predictive information or beyond even prescriptive information. When you put that information in the hands of a business person and you start developing citizen data scientists, right? There's a shortage of data scientists and data people. You turn your business people into their own data scientists by giving them tools. Tools are very friendly now. You train them in those tools. That's what we do. We'll set up data infrastructures, environments that make it easy to get to data, but then we're not the ones to dig into that data. We train up others to be able to dive into the data and have the subject matter expertise to extract, right, that really those valuable nuggets that then get really exciting and they want more valuable nuggets.
Absolutely. No, that's the low code, no code movement, I think, is really we're going to enter a brave new frontier, and then you throw AI on top of that, and it is a brave new world when you get in the data side of things. Dan, I bet data plays a lot into even the delivery of packages, right? Is it there? Is it not? When did it get there, et cetera? When we talked in advance of this panel, we asked ideas, what should we ask? How do we start, these conversations? So I asked you guys for questions. And interestingly, one of the themes we had centered around how many people actually thought you were crazy, not including anybody on this panel or in front of you, but...
Test. Can everybody hear me there?
Yeah,
I want to diss John here.
Yeah, no, go for it. And I deserve it because I did question the viability at the time, but I also said maybe sometime in the future, but probably not today. I don't know, right? I think now it's coming to us, and we can see with information that drone delivery is a reality. How many people told you were crazy? Let's start with that. And then,
I know at least one. My mom, not you. No.
And I talked to her at that event, by the way,
yeah,
and she convinced me.
I love that you own that, John. Thanks, because that is the motivation of everything we're doing is because of John Wechsler, everybody. So thanks, John. No, I always say that if you have a futuristic idea and people don't think you're crazy, you're too late. So I think that speaks to that right there. There's always detractors, right? Whatever you do. But, we saw the vision. We beat Amazon by 9 days on our patent. We beat the Postal Service by 2 weeks and others by less than a month. So really won that race, and that's why we're able to be here today to talk to you guys. So thanks for inviting me. I'm humbled to be up here with these guys. Congrats on what you guys are doing too.
Well, and so you're all entrepreneurs, right? And you're business owners, and that in its own right is quite challenging, right? To open a restaurant or to open up an HVAC company or any company is a challenge. But when you overlay innovation on top of that, there's this question of your sanity, this question of can you do it? There's this question, have you done it before? What do you see as the challenges entrepreneurs face uniquely in this innovation game? Any of you have thoughts on, challenges you've faced or what you've seen as,
Yeah, I would say, you're setting a new paradigm, which is tough, right? Everybody, like in our space, we're not the drone, we're the DroneDek, the mailbox where every shipment starts and ends, but we always hear the question, people are going to be shooting down drones, right? So, that's kind of the mentality you have to defeat. People aren't really going out and shooting down airplanes. There's always those, you're trying to change the paradigm, the way of thinking, and then you've got regulatory in our case, so you're trying to win over the regulators and show how this can be done. So it's really reinventing the wheel. So, you're always dealing with that, and I don't know what you guys have dealt with.
Yeah, I think going back to the mindset, I think it's mindset for me that is the biggest struggle, right? So I tend to have the desire to not care what other people think. People are going to tell you no, people are going to tell you yes, people are going to give you advice, and that is going to be, they're all trying their best, right? but you have to stay the course. But the problem comes in that you have to be willing to listen too. So how do you merge in not caring what people say, right? Not really, being driven by externals, right? Those external factors, and then also being, smart enough to say I'm dumb enough to not know, right? And listen to people too. So that's probably the toughest challenge, is to be able to listen to people and take those advice. And I think the best way that you do that is you have to be able to kind of go into your mind a little bit and play out the scenarios and really say, okay, is what this person telling me really truly beneficial? And take everything and try it out to some level, but then be smart enough to say, okay, you know what? This goes against what I believe, and this goes against what I'm trying to do, me internally, and I'm going to stick to my internal guns. But also, like I said, knowing when to say, you know what, I messed up, right? And that's the toughest part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cynthia?
I think that one of the biggest things is, of course, changing behaviors. That's probably the biggest thing. But then the other thing is fear. So you get all of your data into one spot, and then who has access to it, right? We talked about security some. People, even very mature, large organizations struggle with data governance. So when we're talking about the sharing of data and they don't have data governance in place, how are we going to protect it? How are we going to retain it? How are we going to make sure that only the right people get their hands on it? If we mature and we start, migrating to the cloud, or really lean into the cloud, where there's so much opportunity for savings and automation, and the potential is endless, and that is where it's all going. You've gotta lean into a little bit of fear, because it's new. There is, stories, kind of hit home for me, so I like to share stories. There's a company that we've been working with. It's a multi-generational company. Fourth generation is just starting to get involved. And so they're pretty change resistant. Usually the generations will kind of break that, but they're still a little change resistant. And during COVID, their business actually grew, which was great. Unfortunately, their supply chain broke, okay? And so they were trying to ship partial orders, and the only way that they could do that was by creating a 40,000-line spreadsheet that they manually update to know what work is in process and whatever. And I mean, they've got systems, right? The systems are broken. And so, so I think it sometimes takes that level of pain. You really don't want to have to get that far into pain to be willing to change. But to change behaviors is hard, and I think that's that coupled with fear. I mean, I think it's changing behaviors creates fear. That is the biggest blocker. For us.
I mean, it's interesting because human nature is there's a natural bias against taking a chance or innovating. And you're all kind of like, yep. Cornelius is smiling. How do you help people get over that, right? I know when I was at IBM, I started my career working for Big Blue back when it was the dominant technology company. And the one thing we were actually trained on was how to sell the steeped in Big Blue story, right? Because it's like, you can take a chance if you want with those little computers running Microsoft, and it's really scary, and you might lose your job. Or you can stay. Nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. Let's put it that way. And how do you help people get over that fear and make a decision to try an innovative product or a new way of doing things? Any of you? Yeah.
I think, like I said, I'll always say this every day. Nobody gives a shit about your features. Problems is what people care about, right? And so true innovation to me is when the problems lasted for so long that people have just accepted as the status quo, and they just go about their life like that. And so when you are doing something that's truly innovative, they've accepted life like that, right? And so for us, a lot of times, I start talking to some folks in law enforcement, and they're like, another technology company coming. So if I was just to come out with my product and start talking to people like that, they probably wouldn't listen to me. But here's the thing, though. When you start talking about the problem and the people that you help and how they deal with the problem, they resonate with that problem. They feel it, right? If I told someone, 60 years ago, that there'll be I have a way for you to talk to, this person over here. I have this internet thing. They'd be like, what is that, right? But if I say I have a way for you to communicate with someone in China in 5 minutes, they'd be like, wait, I can do that now, right? So when you talk about the problem that's inherently there, that they know that they feel, really, really, they feel it when they go home, and then you talk a little bit about how you're solving that problem, I think people are willing to listen to you at that point because they know that the problem's there. They realize that and they feel that. Whereas if you come out and say, this is what we do, we're awesome, we're great, they're going to be like, all right, this new guy's coming in saying there's something that's really cool. But the problem is what people care about the most.
Yep.
And just along with the lines there, what Cynthia said earlier, give them a taste. Do something better, deliver value. In our case, better, faster, cheaper, fresher, and that's what we're delivering. And once the word gets out and they experience that's our recipe right there.
Excellent.
Yeah, it depends for what we do a little bit on the level of maturity they have around data and analytics. So if there is an organization that's very, very immature, simply giving them a taste, a simple report or dashboard that they never could have seen things that way before and realize they don't need 7 different versions or need to wait to get another date range printed, right? That it can be so much easier. Then they want more. But when they have some level of maturity around data and analytics and maybe just low adoption, then really demonstrating outcomes, right? Like, okay, so now the results for one line of business was this, or even one policy. We do a lot of government work. And so, we'll use data and analytics to improve people's lives across the state, right? And so, when you can take that information and start driving policy and then, measuring what those outcomes are, people want more and more of that.
Yep. No question, right? That can change everything. It's just illuminating the data.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't know what's going on, and then and sometimes people are fearful of sharing that data or making it available to others. So I can definitely see the balance. We have about a 15, 20-minute window here. I do want to open it up. There are a lot of familiar faces, a lot of smart people in the room, except right up in the front over here in the end. We'll count him in that. No, I'm kidding. This is Christopher Day, a good buddy of mine. Great to see you in the chair at Elevate. By the way, excited to see what happens there. If any of you have questions, please raise your hand. We can get a microphone to you, and you can help guide this conversation forward. I'll ask another, and then I'll let the wheels spin here and get another question going. FailFest is an event that we created up in Fishers about 7 or 8 years ago, and it was designed to celebrate the role of failure in innovation. My question to you, and I'm going to give you a second because you're like, oh, he's going to ask me, what's my biggest failure, right? We don't really want to live vicariously through your biggest failures, but any lessons learned or things that you've learned as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, as a disruptor that you want to share? Cynthia just did a big gulp. She's like, oh, am I going to say it? I don't know. But yeah.
I'll speak just to that generally. I always say that, failure is a progression of success. And, I've had a lot of failures. I've had successes as well. But I would not trade one failure for not knowing. I don't want to be 80 years old sitting in a cubicle maxed out someday and saying, what would have happened had I tried that? I know what happened, and I wouldn't trade any of my failures for not knowing. So that's just how I approach it. Cynthia, what about you?
Well, thank you for asking. I am an expert at failing, but it is educational, right? It is part of the path, and I heard the other day Sam Walton. It took him 25 years to actually start making progress with Walmart. So I'm not 25 years in. I've got a lot longer to go, but. I would say where I have probably slowed myself down or failed to some degree is when I have strayed from my hyper-focus, right? And I think there's so much opportunity to innovate within your space and just to not, get bright, shiny objects, which is easy to do with data, right? There's all kinds of opportunity in that that's hidden gems in there. And so, really, really saying, this is what I'm going after, staying on course. Anyway, I'll try to stay focused on the question, but yeah.
So, it's funny that you say that, right? I recently had a really good reflection on my life. And when I was a senior in high school, I ended my senior high school wrestling career 33-3. I choked in the final, in the postseason, and didn't make it to states. My entire life, up until about 4 weeks ago, I've looked at that moment as one of the greatest failures of my entire life. And I was sitting down and reflecting, meditating on why did I think that? And I realized something. Failure doesn't really exist if you're trying. right? Failure doesn't exist. Because we go through our lives thinking that the goal is actually the goal, but it's the journey. Yeah. What happened through that, right? I ended up breaking records. I learned things, discipline, all of these things that I gained. I build muscles throughout the process. So no matter what you're doing, if you're creating a product, if you're innovating, whatever it is, the process and the journey that you're going through is a win in and of itself. Wherever you end, that's already a win. Failure doesn't exist. You've learned some things that you'll never unlearn. You've created habits that you'll never unlearn. There's all these things that you will never lose by going through the process. So failure, by looking at it as a goal, that's not the right way. If you look at it as the journey, failure never exists. And that's why I was laughing, because I was like, man, that's right in the alley. So that's how I think about things now. It's like, look, as long as I'm trying, I'm working, I'm doing what happens, I never fail. I just get another start.
Very much your Zen moment of the day right there. Failure doesn't really exist. Adam, here, let's get you a microphone. Oh, there you go.
How's it going? Great panel. Adam Berry with the State Chamber of Commerce. So this is a question for each of you. What problem are you currently having that you wish someone would solve?
What did he say?
What problem are you having currently that you wish someone would solve?
We have no problems. Just kidding. Now,
Only opportunities.
Yeah, that's right. Now, in our case, we're not the drone, we're the DroneDek, but we do rely on drone delivery to happen. That's a big part. Autonomous, robotic delivery, unmanned driverless vehicle. So those are all things that are progressing right now, but not at the speed of a startup, more at the speed of government. So it's a little slow, but if that got resolved, I think that would be a big win for what we're doing.
I mean, we're earlier stage startups, so I mean, the problem is always going to be at capital, right? Everything else, that's the only problem that other people can solve for us, right? Sales, all those other things, those are our problems for us to solve, right? So for us, capital. So if you got some money, write me a check.
I'll go with one of the themes of the day, which is just talent. And so, in the technology space, there's always been a limited talent pool. And so, you would poach from other people, right? But, the constraints are too great for that. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be developing talent. So really, our focus is not so much just acquiring. Of course, we want to acquire great talent, but we want to develop our talent. We want to identify raw materials and bring them in across the spectrum of experience. And so that's just a major hyper focus for us right now is talent development.
The first S in spokenoke in our core values is shine. Everybody gets their chance, and we want to find opportunities for people to shine. We want to train them. We want to engage. So I think that's commendable. It's great to hear that. What else? Yeah, right here, Jeremy. Yep, and then I'll come back there.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Landon, okay, I handed the mic off. We'll go
It's okay, John.
And then Landon.
Yeah, so real quick, as an entrepreneur, where are you going? Where are you going in 5 years? What do you want to do, each one of you? Real quick.
We're going nationwide. We've actually just extended our patents to the world, just designated 20 new countries. We're starting here, and we're branching out throughout the country very deliberately and systematically, but that's what we're doing.
There's some other great companies that are doing things with unstructured voice in the city of Indianapolis, and we're in conversations to really try to make Indianapolis somewhat of a hub for that data, right? To be able to do that data. So in 5 years, we're hoping to be in some sort of partnership with those organizations, really making this a space where people, hey, if you need to get information and data from voice, or massive amounts of voice, this is the place to come, right? Indianapolis is the place to come for that. So that's where we'll be in 5 years.
Yeah, and in 5 years, CSpring, I really want it to be the source of data and analytics talent, that we're creating that and stirring up that talent pool. I really want that to be the case. I don't care as much about size. I think that can come as excellence. So I just want to be the source of the best talent out there.
Excellent. That's very nice. Landon, yes, sir.
Do you mind if I go, John?
Please, Landon. Do you have a question?
Landon Young with Elevate Ventures. I've had the pleasure of working with Corn. I love the question on failure and redefining that, and I think you do an awesome job at that. Because this is on innovation and disruption, how are you not only redefining what it means to succeed or fail, but redefining your KPIs, your North Star metrics, things that your competitors aren't measuring, aren't thinking about? How are you looking at that in new and different ways? Thanks.
For me, I don't matter. What I think doesn't matter. What my customers and my future customers think matter. What their problems are matter. So everything is about, what are they trying to accomplish? What are the goals that they're trying to do? And matching up what we do as a company to that, right? And so in terms of KPI and everything else, listen, it's all about what their KPIs are. What are they trying to accomplish? And understanding that and then mapping every single thing that we do as a business to solving those problems. But also, what are they looking to solve 5 years from now? And how do we get there a little bit earlier? And how do we map that? So really it's about the customer and about what they're trying to accomplish.
Companies that have a strategic focus on data and analytics are known to outperform their competitors. They're 2 times more likely to be in the top 25% of financial performers in their segment. They get results, and they get results because they're looking at corporate dashboards every single week, and it's really easy for them to drill down through the levels to see really where are the problems and what they can address quickly. And so, so I think, I forget the question, but that's the answer.
I love that. Quotable. Can somebody put that on Twitter for us? That's great.
I'm just going to go with what she said.
Okay, yeah, that's winning all the way. So, all right, we're coming up, and I just looked at the agenda. Toph, you are up next, and here I am kind of picking on you in the front row. Who's introducing you, by the way? Who is? Oh, and she'll do an awesome job. Okay. Well, then I'll save my comments. I won't steal any of Megan's thunder. But the last kind of theme here, we might riff on this a couple times because you're up at 2:30, is you started to go down the path a little bit ago and you backed out of it just for keeping on scope, right? You're focused. I get that. I love it. Entrepreneurship, innovation, disruption in general, as a means for finding your passion and finding your way and economic self-sufficiency as entrepreneurs and teaching that next generation what it means to add value to the world. I'm filling in a lot here because I want to give you each a chance to rip this out of the park. How important is it as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, as a disruptor, to not only do your job to build value for your stakeholders, but to inspire the next generation behind you? And are you seeing any really good examples of that we can all learn from? A whole lot there, so decide who wants to jump in on that.
I'll just say that if you do something really meaningful and significant and kind of on the cutting edge, you kind of inherently bring in a lot of enthusiasm. So, bringing people into what we're doing has not really been a difficult task. We've got a great team. Nirav out there, Sean, good seeing you guys. I see Jason Pennington out there. Thanks for all your help too, buddy. But just doing something meaningful that will change the market, deliver value, and having a lot of enthusiasm around that can drive a lot of those things. And then just having a great culture internally to keep inspiring that and keeping everybody enthusiastic and right on task. And that's that's what we do every day here at DroneDek. So love my team. Thanks, guys.
Anything here?
Well, passion is contagious, right? So surround yourself with passionate people and be passionate yourself. As a specific example, and so, we work with a lot of different clients, right? So, we have a certain thing that we lean into and other clients do as well. We want our folks to be passionate about that. But we, in this past year, worked with Family and Social Services data and analytics team to actually join forces to hire some OR fellows for them. And the challenge was that, young people aren't like dying to get into government, right? And so, but they're making huge, just huge change. Like great things are coming out of this data and analytics team. So we brought in a couple of data scientists, and they are so fired up about what they get to work on because there's so much passion there around making the lives of people in Indiana better and diving into the data to do that. So in about what are we at? 3 months, like these two have been on for 3 months, they're so in it to win it for government. Like they're going to go back and recruit the next year's fellows into the program and tell them it's cool to work for state government. So, whether it be, a different discipline or whatever, just passion begets passion.
I think for me, I have this theory called primary purpose in life. My primary purpose is protection and education and helping people, right? And so, not just from the business for what we're doing, right? I'm trying to work with every university in the state of Indiana, right? I work with entrepreneurs at Notre Dame, going to be starting at Ball State, Purdue, all these different places, because I think that when we reach these kids and reach the younger generation and teach them the mindset that it takes to go through these things, we all benefit in the long run, right? And so for me, the idea is that, when you look at innovation, I think, and maybe it's arrogant, but I think that I have a pathway that makes sense. And everyone does the best job that they can. So I'm going to do the best job that I can with what I think makes sense on helping other people see the value in being able to think about problems that people have in the world and solving those problems. Because at the end of the day, every business is in sales. And the rule one of sales is a partnership where you're solving their problem that they have and they're solving your money problem. So if we continue to look at what problems people have and continually want to help people solve problems, we're going to have some incredible innovation. And if you can teach that mindset to the younger generation to start looking at it from that perspective, instead of being rich, because you solve a good enough problem, somebody's going to pay you a lot of money for it. Focus on the problem, you'll get the money. And so that's kind of the focus on where I am at, is trying to put that mindset out into the world a little bit more.
Excellent. That's a great punctuation mark on this. Thank you very much, each of you, for our discussion today. I really enjoy watching your successes and look forward to seeing where we go from here. One last thing, one last little disruptive wiggle I want to offer up, because Jen was just getting ready to grab the mic. I want to give a shout out to a handful of my Bunker Labs peer cohort members and Courtney, who runs our group. You guys raise your hands. We got at least 3, 4 of you here. So Bunker Labs is a national organization that helps veterans returning, not only recent returnees, but a stat like I was a veteran a very long time ago. I didn't know I was going to get 10% off at Lowe's, but thank you, everyone. But what we do is we're an accountability peer group. And we were having our meeting over there, like, what? You're doing a panel? We want to go. And so my peer group is here today, and some of others of you in here in a different CEO group that I'm in. The importance of peer mentorship and supporting each other through these journeys is important. It's especially important for veterans. So I just wanted to thank all of you guys for your time and energy and what you do in helping me, and encourage each of you to support others in that same way and go disrupt something. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you.